Hello, in this video we'll talk about balancing a checkbook. We'll define what it is, why it's important, and we'll also go over the specific steps needed to balance a checkbook. So what is balancing a checkbook? It's basically comparing your bank balance, the amount of money that you have on your bank statement, with the balance you calculate, which is where most of the work comes in. And the balance you calculate involves you taking the amount of money in your bank and the amount of money you've spent and subtracting, finding the difference between that. So usually you'll have, let's say, $300 in your bank, and then you'll maybe write a check. You take out money from the bank, so you would subtract that amount from your total that you had in your bank. And then it also involves taking the amount of money in your bank and adding to it whatever amount you put into the bank, the amount that you deposit, which is just the amount of money you put into it. Maybe you got paid on this month, and then you would just put in the money, so you would also have to add that. And why is it important? So it's one way of knowing exactly how much money is in your bank. That way you can avoid bouncing checks, which is basically not having enough money in your bank for your check to be processed. So if you write a check for $300 and you only have $200 in your bank, that's when you have a bouncing check. The bank will not be able to process it. You won't be able to make whatever payment you wanted to make with that $300. So that it's one way of avoiding that, because if you know that you don't have enough money in your bank, you won't have a bouncing check. You also won't receive maintenance fees if you balance your account, which are basically just knowing how much money is in your bank, and by avoiding bouncing checks, you won't get maintenance fees. It also helps you detect errors in case your bank makes mistakes, because banks do make mistakes, and when they make mistakes, they might make you pay fees that you didn't have to pay because they made the error and not you. And also, you know how much money you're spending by when you balance your checkbook. I mean, you're going through all your transactions. You're going through how much money you put in, and how much money you took out. So that way, you get to see how much money, you're putting out and you're putting in. And if you balance your checkbook, and if you balance your check once a month, you can catch mistakes before they're too late. So you can catch all these mistakes and avoid bouncing checks and avoid errors before it's too late if you do it once a month. It's always best to do it once a month. So let's go over the step-by-step how-to. So the first thing you need to do is find your checkbook, and in your check register should be in your checkbook. So the check register is where you do the balancing, and it's a simple notebook. It's usually in the back of your checkbook, that just looks like it has a whole bunch of lines. It has withdraw, payments, deposits written on it. It's usually in the back, included with your checkbook. And this is what it looks like. This is the basic, copy, a basic version of it. And if you don't have one in your checkbook, you can buy one easily, or you can just make one. It's not difficult to find it. You could also, if you have a computer, you can also make one on Excel, which makes it a lot easier because you can do the math in Excel, or Excel can do the math for you, which makes it more automatic and much less time consuming. Okay, so let's start talking about what you actually have to write down. So the first thing you do is you write down your balance for the month, which is how much money you have in your bank, in your account so far. And in this example, they have $300 in the bank for that month. for the start of that month. And then the next thing you do is record all your transactions. Transactions just means checks that you wrote to take out money from the bank, or money that you put into the bank. So any amount of money that's going in or that's coming out of the bank, of your bank account, is what you would write down. So if you're writing a check, in this example they wrote a check, you would write down the check number, you would write down the date that you wrote that check number, the date that you wrote the check, what it was for. So in this example it was for groceries, and you would write down how much money in dollars, and then how many cents also goes in here. And then you would write down and in this component you would be subtracting from the total that you had before, that you started out with, what you took out. So transactions, what do transactions mean? Transactions could be withdrawals, which are money that you took out in cash form or in check, also in check form, and payments you made. So payments are money that you use to pay for something, like bills is an example, or withdrawals that you made from an ATM. This is withdrawals that you made from your bank. You could also make withdrawals from an ATM. And also when it comes to ATMs, there's a fee that usually comes along with that, and you would also have to write that down. You would also have to record that as one of your transactions. We'll talk about that later. There's also online bill payments. If you do have a computer, usually you could set it up where you make your payments through your bank account directly. And then also there's deposits. Like we said before, it's the amount of money you add to your bank, or transfers. So that could mean money that you took from one account and put into another. So for example, if you're balancing your check for your checking account, you might take money from your savings account and put it into your checkings account. So when you make that transfer, you're putting money in, so you would have to record that also. And it also goes the other way around. If you take money out of your checkings account and put it in your savings account, you would have to record how much money you took out of your checkings account. So let's go, we've gone over what these sections mean, what these rows mean. So this part, the withdrawals and payments, is, like we said before, how much money you took out, payments you made. So basically money taken away from the bank, from the amount of money in your bank account. And then also ATM fees. When you use an ATM to make a withdrawal, there's usually a fee associated with that. You would also record that here. There's room for that here. And then also your deposits and transfers, so money that went into the bank, into your bank account, would also be written here. So the next step is recalculating your balance. Hopefully this is done at each transaction to avoid errors, and it makes things a lot easier. And what recalculating involves is subtracting from the total you have so far any transfers out of the account, withdrawals, payments from the account, checks written taking money out of the account. So if you started out with $300 and you write a check for $200, you would subtract from the total the $200, and you would be left with $100. So any amount of money you take out of the account, you would subtract from the total. You would also have to add to the total any money you put in, any deposits, any credit you got, any transfer into the account. So if you got paid the next month and you got paid, let's say, $1,000, you would add into the account how much money you got paid if you did put that $1,000 into that account. The next step is to reconcile your checkbook. What that means is it's the same thing as adding your transactions or subtracting your deposits, withdrawals. It's the same thing, but this time it has to do with fees, because you do get fees from your bank. There are fees associated with using ATMs, so that has to be subtracted also. So subtract from your balance any fees the bank has charged you. Those fees could come from, like we said, they could be maintenance fees or errors that were made where there was enough money in the bank to process a check. Your bank would charge you a fee for that also. And then you would have to add to your balance interest the bank has paid you. We know interest could be at maybe 1%. And your bank would give you 1% of what you have in your account, of the amount of money you have in your account, and add that to your account. So you would also have to record that. And in this example, this person got an interest on this date, and it was $2.03. That's also important. It's a very small number, but you also have to add that. The next step is we're still on reconciling your checkbook. So the next thing that you have to make sure happens is that the transactions that you wrote and the transactions your bank account wrote should match. And you can find those transactions on your bank statement, which is usually mailed to you, or it's also on your online account if you do have an online account. The next step is to check for mistakes and correct them. So humans do make errors. We make math errors, so make sure you don't have any errors, math errors. And another important step is to look for missing transactions. When your bank account, when your transactions on your statement don't match with the transactions you wrote, what you can do to find the transaction that might be missing is take the balance in your statement, the final balance, and subtract that from the balance in your check register. And then what that difference you find should help you find out what that missing transaction is. And then the other step is to see if all your checks have been cleared, which is basically the money that you took out from your bank or you added into your bank should also be taken out from your bank or added to your bank. So if you wrote a check for $300, then that money should have been taken out from your bank. And if you do find any errors, you can contact your bank. You could call them or visit them and speak to them about that. So the next step is to finish up balancing. Finishing up means just at the end of the month, the last transaction has been written down, and then you've subtracted or added from your total. So in this example, their final balance is $351.51. Okay, and so let's go through an example real quick. So this person wrote a check on this date to buy books for college, and they paid $58.20, and so they started off with $310, and now they have to take out $58.20 from the bank account, so they'd write that down and subtract from the total and end up with $252.20, and they'd keep doing that for all the transactions. Now on this date, on August 25th, they made a deposit, so they would add to the bank to the amount they had before, so that would bring their total up a little bit to $357.93. So if you want a check register template, you can find them on these websites. This is one where you can download and print. This is an Excel version where you could download and add to your Excel documents. We'll post these at the bottom in the comment section under this video.